Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Emily Berge of Eau Claire is a Democrat running in the 68th Assembly District. Emily, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. As a first-time candidate for state office, what do you consider your chief issue?
Well, as I'm traveling throughout the 68th, I've been hearing lots of different issues. And I would say the biggest one that people bring up COVID a lot. You know, that's impacting the local communities very, very impactfully. It's very significant, and there's a lot of worries there. And then connected to that actually is internet access and making sure it's affordable and accessible. Because I think, and that really impacts lots of different, you look at education, if these schools have to go virtual, and yet if these kids don't have access to their teachers online, they don't have access to their education. Same with healthcare, which includes mental health care. I'm a counselor here in Eau Claire. And, when everything hit back in April, I very quickly had to put my practice on telehealth or telemedicine, which was quite stressful, but I did it. However, that was only part of the solution. And I had clients tell me that they couldn't continue counseling because they didn't have internet access at their homes. Because a lot of people from rural Wisconsin come to Eau Claire for their health care, including mental health care. So, and even if I could connect with people, their internet connection is often spotty, even to this day. And I will lose them, which is very distressing to us both. So internet is a huge issue that I have firsthand knowledge and I've seen throughout the district. So.
Okay. Well, one question related to the pandemic, Senate Republicans would like to convene the legislature to overturn the governor's statewide mask edict if you're in a enclosed space. What's your position on the governor's mask edict, Emily?
Well, so I serve on the Eau Claire City Council. And, so I've gotten lots of emails about masks. And the very first people that were emailing me very urgently were small business owners. And they wanted a mask mandate because they wanted their business to stay open. They wanted the economy to stay open. I wanted the economy to stay open and the businesses to stay open. And they were very stressed out. They were trying to run this business in a pandemic, and they felt like their employees were getting harassed because they were trying to enforce masks. However, their employees were getting harassed by people that didn't agree with that. It just caused a lot of stress that small businesses, they to put one more thing on their plate, and they wanted to stay open. So I think that's a really important fact to listen to the small businesses. And I think with the mask mandate now, people are going out more because they feel more safe. And so we can keep businesses open. People can still get paid so they can still go shopping. And I think masks allow this economy to stay open. So I do support, people wearing masks. And a state mandate's the best way to do that because people weren't wearing masks before that. And employees were having a really hard time enforcing that.
Okay. New subject that's very timely, especially in light of the president visiting Kenosha. The governor has put before the legislature this 9-bill policing reform package. Some elements include ban chokeholds and require reports of use of deadly force by local officers, minimum training standards statewide for those that want to be police officers, ban no-knock warrants. Do you support the governor's 9-bill package?
Well, it's interesting because, I do support it. And Senator Wangard, put something forward not too long ago, well, August 26th, I guess, so last week. And I went over his legislation and I went over the governor's legislation. And it's like 98% the same. So I think that that's a great place to start. So yes, I support the governor's legislation, and the senators looks fantastic as well. And it has a police backing. In Eau Claire, I support evidence-based policing, which our Eau Claire police force does an excellent job. We have such a great police department in Eau Claire, and I've worked hard to develop relationships with them, and they show up all the time too. And they have excellent training. They work hard at community relationships. They continue to do so. They've leaned into these discussions about racial, disparities, and I'm just so proud of our Eau Claire Police Department. And I think a standard statewide is a good idea.
Okay, thank you. There was a report issued yesterday that said that state tax collections were okay for the year ended on June 30, but because of the pandemic, there are fears that we could not be collecting as much taxes in our current year. So if we were 1 billion, 1.5 billion short, should we cut spending or should we raise taxes or fees?
Well, I don't think it has to be an either or answer, black and white answer. I think there's lots of different, well, I mean, not lots, because, right now, local governments have levy limits, and they only get, they can only create revenue for public infrastructure by property tax. So maybe it's looking at different ways to raise revenue. I think also being creative with, you look at, this might sound random, but Airbnbs and vacation homes, are collecting room tax, which goes to local governments. However, local governments are always collecting that money. So it's also, looking at how are other ways can we collect? Where is money being left on the table that local governments can help capture, and giving them resources to help make sure they get that tax money back to their communities. Same with Medicaid expansion. That's money being left on the table from the federal government. We already pay those taxes to the federal government. Why, so we should get that back as well as Wisconsinites. So I think there's different ways, to generate that revenue, whether it be, different taxes or, and prioritizing too. I think we might have to I think we will have to prioritize in these tough times, the spending as well. So.
Okay. Well, as a member of the city council, then let's talk about property taxes. Because Wisconsin is a high property tax state, the property tax caps and limits have been in place for more than 20 years. If you're voting on the next state budget as a member of the assembly, would you vote to continue those caps and limits on property tax levies by local governments?
I think levy limits are strangling local governments. It does not give them the options to create revenue for and investments for their local communities. It's right now it's tied to net new construction. And you look at, Eau Claire, we're doing okay. Levy limits is still very difficult, but you look at smaller communities that may not have that net new construction. And so it becomes this catch-22 of, they need investments. They need that public dollars to invest in their community. It's to draw businesses there and to build. However, they can't put those investments there without, having people, to build there too. So it becomes, levy limits just, it strangles and, ties our hands behind our backs with, options of and we can't keep up with expenses. You look at just healthcare alone for a city staff, that's going through the roof, and the levy limits don't keep up. So, and then plus shared revenues continue to decrease dramatically each year. So, we are very reliant on property taxes, and there needs to be other options for local government to pay for the roads, wastewater.
Well, taking that a step further, is it time for local governments like the city council you serve on to have different revenue options? Milwaukee wants a half-cent sales tax. There's a plan in the Capitol that says let's expand our 5% sales tax to some now exempt products and services and give some of that additional money back to local government. Do local governments like the one you serve on need alternative sources of revenue?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I also serve on the board of Wisconsin municipalities, the statewide board, and we've talked about that a lot, how we just need different options. We can't, you're right, Wisconsin relies very heavily on property tax, and we need other options. I mean, it just comes down to options and local control too. Local government should be able to find different ways to fund their villages and their cities. So, yes, we need options, and I feel, yeah, yes.
Okay. Last year, Governor Evers recommended raising the gas tax to stabilize our funding for highways and bridges. Didn't go anywhere, but would you be willing to support a gas tax increase?
Yeah, I think people that use the roads, I think, should pay for the roads. When I'm driving along 29, I see probably half the cars are from Minnesota or Illinois. Same when I go on 94. And right now they're not, they should pay for the roads just as much as Wisconsinites should pay for the roads. So as a gas tax would put, right now the burden is all on Wisconsinites with the, vehicle registration fees. We should share that burden by the people that use the roads. So yeah, I think a gas tax is the most fair way to do that, to help pay for roads. Illinois people should help pay for what they use too, and Minnesota.
The debate in the Capitol over who should draw the next congressional and legislative district lines. The Constitution says the party that controls the Capitol, the governor wants a People's Maps Commission. What's your position on redistricting?
Mm-hmm. I'm a huge proponent of nonpartisan redistricting. I don't think there should be safe seats for Republicans or Democrats. I think people should get to choose their elected official. That's the whole point of a democracy. Yes, the state constitution states that the legislature approves the legislative maps. Last time around when we did this and the legislature did this, they used attorneys and legislative aides to draw the maps. And so I think if this time around, I think it's a good idea I would hope the legislature takes a more nonpartisan approach in drawing the maps. And the People's Commission, that's nonpartisan. Elected officials can't serve on that committee. So I think I would rather have the legislature take input in a fair and unbiased way through the People's Commission and use that they'll still approve the maps, but use that to approve the maps rather than, in secret and with attorneys. So I think that's very important. And the Iowa model as well is very important to use. And I think Governor Evers is trying to go that route as well. It's nonpartisan, it's data, it's the most fair way to have representation.
We've seen how hospitals in Wisconsin and nationally have been on the front lines treating COVID patients. If you're in the legislature voting on the next state budget, should hospitals have an even bigger priority, greater priority than they might have in the current budget?
Well, I guess I would have questions. What money would that go? I mean, what would they use that funding for? Would it be capital improvements or is it staff? I think it depends on where that money would go to. I would hope. I think operational costs, and I think if the funding went to, the people, the employees, I think because they are on the front lines, the nurses and the doctors and the ERs and the ICUs, and they should get paid for that. But also, going back to Medicaid expansion, that really be money on the table right now that could be going to the hospitals. So what if we expand Medicaid or, and use that federal money that we're already paying for, give that to the hospitals and then use our statewide dollars, in someplace else. Other businesses are hurting all the time with COVID. What if we can help small businesses stay open? So hospitals are very important, but I do feel like there's federal money that could go towards hospitals, and small businesses, they need our help just as much as hospitals do too.
Okay. Republican leaders of the U.S. Senate have said in the next CARES package, there should be an exemption that businesses and organizations that follow the protocols to protect their employees and customers from COVID should be exempt from lawsuits. Senator Kapping just put out a press release today saying he's sponsoring a state law exempting them. Do we need a state law exempting them from lawsuits?
Well, I think again, my brain goes to questions of are they, so the state law, what are the employers doing, the business owners doing to protect their employees and customers and clients? I think that's the big thing. I've been at businesses where there's signs on the door that says masks are not mandated. And this was just last week. And there's waiting room and the employees are not wearing masks. And this was a car place and the waiting room was right there with 2 chairs right across the desk where employees weren't wearing masks. And, so if someone could be waiting there and if employees aren't wearing masks and following public safety guidelines and someone gets sick, that's a question of, are they doing everything they can do to protect their employees and customers before we even talk about lawsuits? Now, with lawsuits, I own my own business. I'm in private practice and I have insurance now, to protect myself because people do sue, and being a counselor, people might sue in a business. And I have insurance to protect me. So that's also part of the question too, is what type of insurance is involved with this? And, that I just have more questions than maybe answers that, if the question is, they're doing everything they can, and it's reasonable. I mean, I like that word reasonable. And then, I would be willing to look at that of what does it all entail? So, because I get that. I'm nervous too about seeing clients and being, getting sued or something if someone gets sick. It weighs on my mind a lot, actually. So I understand that for business owners.
As a city council member, I'm curious about how you feel about this. Should local governments and school districts, if they plan a major public works project, should they have to give a preference to Wisconsin businesses? And kind of the reason I ask is a study found that in 2015, out-of-state contractors got $72 million in public works projects, but that more than doubled to $146 million by 2018. Should local governments have to give a preference to Wisconsin businesses?
Well, I think that's yes. I mean, I think that's the best practice that, public money should go to local businesses because that just stimulates the local economy in our downtown main streets because people then shop there and spend money there. So yes. And I know with Eau Claire City, that's part of our criteria when we decide on different things is how close it is to Eau Claire. So, yeah.
Okay. What's your position on legalizing medical and recreational marijuana?
Yeah. Well, it's, that was on the ballot 2 years ago. And I've kind of, I looked at Eau Claire numbers, Eau Claire County, looked at Clark County numbers. And then, the 68th, it encompasses 5 counties, which is a lot of counties in one district. But overwhelmingly, they all support legalization of marijuana, medical marijuana. Each ballot kind of asked the question a little different way, but they overwhelmingly supported medical marijuana. To be honest, as a counselor, I do see worst case scenarios with things with addiction issues. However, but then I think it's not any different. I see a lot of bad things with alcohol too. And alcohol is legal. So maybe it is better that we legalize marijuana. We have regulations around it. We can tax it, which can fund treatment programs. So, I definitely think that's a pathway forward. I'm in support of that if it's done smartly and regulated. And that's what the people want in the 68th too, which I think is important to listen to the people.
Final question: differences between you and your opponent on November 3?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a big difference is that I do have a mental health background. I have my master's degree in mental health counseling. I've worked in ERs, emergency room at Sacred Heart. I worked on behavioral health units in schools and outpatient unit or day treatment programs for kids. And now, like I said, I'm in private practice. And so I think that gives me experience and a skill set to not only the listening part that I think our leaders need. And, I listen to understand, not to respond. And I think that's very important as well. And I also see the challenges with mental health. There's a very thin line between mental health and physical health. And mental health impacts employment issues as well. And so I know how important it is. I see every day how important it is. And I see ways forward that we can even improve our mental health of our kids, adults. And that would just create a more vibrant community that we all live in. So I think that mental health aspect is very advantageous. So, and then I will also say another difference is, being an elected official in a nonpartisan way, I think is also given, local government is about getting things done. And I feel very strongly about, it's just getting things done. It's about coming together and getting things done. It doesn't really matter what side you're on. If someone has a good idea and if they're on the other side, that's okay. Just to say that's not a good idea because whatever letter is behind their name, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I have experience of just you just get things done, So I think that's important.
Thank you. Emily Berge of Eau Claire is a Democratic candidate in the 68th Assembly District. The election is November 3. Emily, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And hello from Eau Claire.
Thanks. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.